Greetings, people. We are finally here. Episode 5 is upon us, so we can finally start building this freaking board after all the work we've been doing to make sure that we're ready to do it. So today is all about finishing this thing. So yahoo! The way I've got it set up, I've got a camera here pointed at me so I can talk to you. I've got one on top of the board here, and I've got one on top of the soldering station even. And if I want to, I can even go heavy detail on that stuff as well. So it's pretty cool. There are a few things that have changed. So it's been quite a while since I shot episode 1, to be honest. For one, I was planning on having a couple Zumas and a couple Ojai R30s, but for space, it made a lot more sense to do one Zuma and 4 Ojais. So that's kind of what I'm doing. I've got 3 R30s and 1 regular Ojai. The system can do 48 watts, so I mean it's powerful. So yeah, why bother? I don't need 2 big Zumas. I got one, and it also makes it easier for routing AC. I only need 1 AC connection as opposed to 2, which takes up more room. And there's another reason why it's tricky. This is the input port here. You can see it. This is the 8-channel input port for the Snake. And the problem is the power supplies that go right in front of it. So I want to try to keep the AC away from all of the audio. So having 1 Zuma with AC means I only have 1 AC connection right to here, nice and short, and it stays away from the rest of the board, which is nice. The other thing that has changed is that I was planning on having an HX stomp on the board as sort of my Swiss Army knife, if that makes sense. Anytime I needed compression, a univibe, if Mobius was busy doing something else, pitch shifting, EQ, and maybe even a slapback delay in front of the preamp, even though we have lots and lots of delays after. Sometimes it's nice to have one in front because the preamp will color it if you have the amp set correctly. So in doing a bunch of testing and sort of trying to make everything fit, it just made, I don't know, HX Stomp was going to be kind of difficult to make it work here. I was always going to need a parallel path because I wanted half of it in front of the preamp and the other half after the preamp, and working with patches and trying to control it and program and stuff was going to be pretty gnarly. So as well, in doing just some testing, I realized that I really can't live without Compadre and Ultraviolet. I'm not gonna. So I needed to find another way to do it. So HX Stomp is out. It's a great pedal, but it's out. And to replace it, I got Compadre for compression, Ultraviolet for my Univibe. I have a GFI Enigma for a stereo EQ, and it is stereo, so one half will be in front of the preamp and the other half will be in the effects loop, mono. And then an EHX pitchfork that'll do the pitch shifting, and then also a Brig that'll do any delay in front of the amp's preamp, that if I want that to happen. And as well, I'm also going to need a Mission Expressionator to be able to share 1 expression pedal between 3 ports. So the 1 expression pedal will be connected to the volume out of Compadre, the EXP port on the Pitchfork, and also one of the Omni ports on the MC6 Pro. So I can just tap through it and select what I want the expression pedal to be screwing around with at that point, and it will keep all those values for the other devices it was talking to static. So pretty neat little box, actually, the Expressionator, if you need one. Anyway, so we're ready to go. First thing to do is to look at this corner of the box. So this is where the main power supply is. You'll notice here that it is IEC, right? And I mentioned in the last video that one of the things that's really important is knowing the direction of where the cable is going to exit certain devices. And this is one of them. So for instance, you can see, I'm trying to think, you can see this. So, it's the ground pin is on the top. So if I had a cable that was right angled and it went this way, right, it would mean that the cable would exit towards my 8-channel port, and I'd have to bend it back around to get it to reach here, which is no bueno. Like, why bother? I can buy another cable that exits the right way, either this way, or in this case, the one that I actually ended up doing it, is I actually bought one that comes straight up. So the cable will come out, come straight up to here, and then basically we'll get onto the 8-channel Snake right after that. Now, before we do anything, though, it's probably a good idea to try to figure out where this Snake cable goes. So I have the Snake cable, and if we look at it, it's going to have to sort of go through all of this stuff here. So it makes the most sense to try to sort of measure. If I give myself a little bit of slack, okay, it's going to go there. Oh, by the way, I took that jack out, by the way. It's going to go there. Probably going to have to go around here and go like that. So I've got some extra slack here at the end that I'm going to have to cut off. But this length and this sort of route probably makes the most sense. I could, for instance, route it this way, where it came around. The problem, though, is that then it's going to be, my audio is going to be right in contact with the AC cable, and I would really like to keep it as far away from it as possible. Sometimes it doesn't matter, sometimes it does, but for me, I have always been really anal about keeping all of my DC and all of my audio away from my AC. So I'm going to sort of go this way and use it as this kind of thing. So yeah, let's start actually popping this out and seeing what we get. So here is the SpeakOn jack outside of the pedal board, so you can see the labeling on it. I mentioned how much easier it is to solder than like a 25-pin connector, and you can see why. So for one, the labeling's super easy. So these were originally designed for speakers, which are 2-channel connections, so they're in pairs. You can see that this is positive and negative for channel 1, positive and negative for channel 2, positive and negative for channel 3, positive and negative for channel 4. So if you remember from the schematic, in terms of the way that we're laying out the channels, I think it's number 1 is the amp input. Number 2, which is 1 minus, is going to be the amp effects end. This is the amp effects return. That is originally a ground. Then that's going to be channel switching A, channel switching B, and then another ground, I think. Now, the thing is that we're not going to need all of these connections for the cable snake that we're going to be using. However, I am going to wire them all to the box, just in case in the future I need to have some more channels. So I'm trying to make sure that I future-proof myself. All right, so we've got all of these cables stripped. These are all balanced lines. So you've got 3 conductors per, and we don't need all of these. So we'll probably join the tall ones together. And the idea is that we want to make sure that there's only a little bit of wire actually connecting to each one of these guys. And the reason for that is we want to make sure that when this is leaning over this way, exiting through the back of the board, that these things don't touch each other and start shorting stuff out. And to that end, we're going to have to join all of these grounds together, right? So all the grounds have to get joined together, but we're going to join them and then basically trim them so that only a little bit of, and I'll do this better here in a minute, but the idea, you can get an idea here. So the idea is that we're going to join them all, so that all the grounds are joined here. And I'm going to solder them together like that. And then I'm going to trim them so there's only about that much showing, and that'll go onto pin 8 here. And that way the rest of these guys can snake over and it will exit the side of the connector like this, and nothing is going to lean over and touch anybody else and short. All right, and here we go. We're going to shrink this twice. We're all good. So we're going to take this long, sort of larger 3/4 inch piece and cover all of our connections with it like that. There we go. Kind of hard to see, but yeah, so it's covering everything. And now, so the idea behind heat shrink is that it's easier. Some people use a match. You can do it, but I'm just using a hot air gun. Turn it on. Yeah, look at that. See? No problems. One bigger one and we're good. And there you go. We now have a fully functional, nice stiff thing there. It's going to work. And then the Zuma will go right underneath, and you can see why it's important. We did this. We want to make sure that we keep the AC away from that guy there. So now it's time to move on to AC. We'll worry about this part of it later, but we can move on to the AC for now. Okay, so first thing we need to do is make sure that we understand which leads these relate to in terms of on our actual power jack. So the easiest way to do that is to take our multimeter, and we have our little cable here that we know plugs into the back of our Zuma, right? So in order to figure out what the pins are, we can take this and connect this guy to here and just see, all right, relative to these guys, which one's which. So we know that this is ground, so it's going to go, there you go. You probably can't hear that, but trust me that when it's making noise, it's making noise. And then this one's going to be that one there. This one's going to be that one there. So traditionally, this is ground, neutral, hot. So now we can take this, now that we know that that works that way, we can plug it into this guy. Make sure you turn the power switch on or else it won't actually send information. And now we can make sure that we know what the colors are. So green should be ground. And it is. So this should be neutral, so that should be white. It is. And this is hot, so that should be the black. And it is. So now we know how this all works, and we can wire this guy, chop this guy short, and wire them right to this switch. So if we put this guy in here, get it roughly into place, we can see that we don't need it very long at all. So it's got to be right about there. But also remember that if you're going to have shrink wrap on this, which we want it to be, the shrink wrap has to be on here before you solder everything together, because you can't slide it on after that. So you got to remember, leave yourself some room for the shrink. There you go. And you can see that these colors are slightly different than those colors. So I know that this is ground, but I'm actually not sure which is which here. So now I'm going to have to pull these off and re-meter to make sure that I understand what these colors mean to this jack. And let's just check our meter here. So we know that is ground, so that's going to be green. Good. That is neutral. Brown? Nope, blue. All right. Which means that the hot is brown. And then just for my own edification, I'm going to make sure that really is hot. So last thing, if you're just confused, you want to make sure, last but not least, just make sure. All right. That is ground. We know that. Good. Is that really hot? Yes, it is. And that is neutral. All right, cool. So now we know. Be careful. Shrink on these individual guys. And you want to try to get them to be the right length so that they don't get very close to the heat, because then they'll start to pre-shrink. So you want to make sure that you get them sort of as far away from here as you can, but still have the ability to be long enough to do the right thing when they're all connected. So now we can basically join these together. And then the idea with this kind of stuff, do it here, is just to wrap these guys around each other this way. So that it's a skinny connection once it's soldered together. So see that? Slide that, like that, like that, and like that. Look at that. Nice and protected, super solid, safe. Now we can give that a second or two. Actually, probably don't even need to because this thing's so huge. And then go in with this guy and sort of get everybody that you can in there. Shrink away. Bang. That is pretty clean. Very safe. Yep. Nice. All right, so let's talk about mounting the Zuma. So Zumas have an available mounting kit that you can buy. It's made out of the same kind of stuff. It's bent sheet metal, so it's very strong. It is designed primarily to mount this underneath a board. Underneath like a pedal train or something like that. So our needs are a little different, and we're going to have to modify these mounts a little bit. I should say, if you're going to modify anything, you basically have voided the warranty. You must know this. So if you bend something and it breaks, well, you're going to need another one. So anytime you're bending metal, do it slowly. If you go too quickly, you might go over the threshold that tensile strength can handle, and you'll just snap it off. So go very slowly. So on this one, normally this flange is flat, and I've bent it to be in line with this. And the reason for that is because this way I can mount this to the side and screw it to the side of the board here, which is good. And then for this one, I've modified it as well. So I've taken off the flange on the front, which I don't need. They'll just be sitting in free air, taking up space. And I've also removed with a grinder some of the material here. And the reason for that is I want this cable to be able to go around it. So if you put this guy on like this, like that, then you plug this guy in like this. Can't really see that because I'm sitting down, but anyway. And there. Now I've got this thing in there. So I can screw this to the side here. I've got two tabs that I can screw down to there, and that will be very secure. So no problems at all. This will work great for me. So let's do it. Okay, so I've got these little screws that I got from my local hardware store that are just long enough to grab nicely into this wood, but not quite long enough to poke out the end and pierce the outer layer of the lovely Tolex that the guys from Pedal Pad did. So basically I get this all where I want it to be, and then basically tie this guy down. Where are you going to go there, Junior? Well, maybe we'll do this guy first. All right. Need more hands. There we go. There we go. They're self-threading. A little bit of elbow grease. Elbow grease. Thank you. And actually, one right about here. I'll basically do it. I'll put one more in for good measure, but this will do it. All right. That is nice and solid. I'll do one more just because there's a flange and I can do it, but it doesn't really need it. I can't see it either, so I have no idea if I'm actually doing this correctly. Hey, check that out. There you go. Cool. So now it is mounted. This will go do its job. Can go under there. It can do whatever it needs to do to go there. So we're good. Let's move on. Okay, so for securing the R30s, it's going to be a little different because there's no way to really secure them like an L-shaped bracket. That doesn't really work. So what I thought I might do is I got some of these little brackets from Amazon, and the idea is that you secure it down to the wood with a screw, and then you can basically take like a zip tie, and it goes around that. So that should be pretty powerful. So my thought was to sort of like do one in between those pair of jacks, one on the end, and then maybe one around the side to really secure it while making sure that I'm sort of securing this at the same time. So I think that's probably the thing to do. I've got one there already. So if I just sort of try to put another one correspondingly on the other side, basically, just the fact that those brackets are up against the case of the R30 will also help sort of extra secure it a little bit. There we go. Yeah, so you can see that it automatically doesn't want to move much. So then I could come through and take two, because it will take two. I might be able to just get one. I've got some longer ones. Let me go find those. Perfect. They fit perfectly. It's a new one. Never done these before, but seem like might work pretty well. He says, trying to get his head out of the way. I'm wearing a hat, so you can't see my bald spot. I'm kidding, I don't have a bald spot. However, it's a thin spot. Might not be bald, but it counts. Okay. We do that, and now I'm going to just take another one of these ends, zip it down to the end, and we'll be good. So if I'll take this guy here, this is a sneaky little thing you can do sometimes. Just use this as a nut. Get it all nice and tight as you can. There you go. So that's one. I'll do that for the other ones, and I can still plug stuff in. Oh, there's the end of it. Get it tight. Snip it off. And Bob's your uncle, Mary's your aunt. There you go. Look at that. Those dudes aren't, I don't even need to do the sides. Those guys aren't going anywhere. Sweet. Probably time to make all the little adapter cables for these. So these use EIAJ cables. So there'll be a lead coming from here to the end of one, and then from the outer one to the end of the next, outer one to the end of the next, outer one to the end of the next. So I'm not going to be soldering these ends. I'm just going to trim them and cut them because I don't have all day to be able to do that. So I'm going to take all the EIAJ cables, cut them to length, solder them, shrink them, and then we'll be all ready. So the idea is that one will go, that'll be out of the Zuma, and then you'll get one to there, and then another one from there to there, and another one from there to there. So I don't want all this stuff. I want these nice and short and sexy. So let's find out how long they need to be and trim them up. Because the first one might be a little wonky, we'll start here. See if that works. All right. Trim it up. Okay. So if we're sort of hoping that much shrink will do the job, we'll see. It's going to be tricky, but we'll see. These aren't very long. This is a reason maybe to cut the cables a little longer, just to give yourself a bit more slack on stuff, and then try to get these guys to mate properly. And what I'm doing is trying to mate them so that they stay skinny like that, see? And then solder. There are no wire nuts in this land. Here we go. This is not doing a ceiling fan, baby. I want this stuff to be bulletproof. There we go. First things first, make sure that these guys cannot touch and short each other out. I don't want to have to deal with that. So there we go. Nice and secure. And then the shrink comes over and hides all evil. Now, next time I'll probably make sure that these two guys here, whoops, are a little longer so that this doesn't sort of look so ganky. But it's safe, it's fine, it's great for the first one, so call it good. And for testing the fit, you'd say, all right, that goes there, that goes there. That could be, I mean, it's short, it could be sexier, but in a way, the next one will go there, the next one will go there. So it's not the end of the world. I mean, it's fine, honestly. It's my analness of wanting, oh, it doesn't look all, I can see the red and black. Nah, it's not perfect. It's totally fine, and it's solid and secure, and it works. So, geez, just move on with your life. And that'll go from there to there, and we can decide. And actually can do all sorts of different things if we decide to do those things, but for now, it's short, doesn't have a ton of cables running around, so that's the most important bit. I mean, you know, it would be great if these EIAJs were, you know, I could just use one side and sort of like just redo the head, but unfortunately the heads are not traditional 2.5 millimeter, they're plastic insides, and I'd be afraid of ruining them, so this is the best way to do it. But all right, so that's done. Now it's time to start thinking about all the DC stuff on the side of the board and routing that to this thing. When it comes to starting in on the DC stuff, I might as well start with the stuff that's closest to the main Zuma. So that's going to be these two external output jacks and jack for the Bogner Ecstasy Red, and maybe some of the other stuff. Maybe these three maybe will be next. So the idea is that we'll take cables here that pre-exist. So these are existing cables. And basically, I'm going to channel it right along the side of the board here. And I'll put both these guys together. So you'll have basically two of these guys right next together with one of those little mounts there. That's what I'll do. So we're going to trim this or cut it so that it's right about there with some shrink. Yeah, so I can just cut this in half, basically. Just about. Yeah, don't even need that much. So, like, ta-da! Over there, maybe, just to be safe. There we go. Trim, solder, shrink, go. One thing about these cables, it's a little different. So these have one sort of shielded wire in the middle and one drain or ground kind of thing. And so on these guys, it's important to realize which is which. So if you turn your meter on, The tip, remember that most guitar pedals run on negative tip, but it doesn't matter. You need to worry about the orientation of the wire. So right now, even though technically it sounds like it's reversed, technically the white is the inside, it's the tip. And the ground is the outside, the sleeve, like you expect. So to know which is which, the best thing to do is to plug it in there and make sure that things match. Now, the thing is that these are originally designed to do DC, not AC, and as a result, the colors are kind of backwards usually. So that is the positive, and as opposed to AC, where black is positive, here, red's going to be positive, and traditionally, the ground is black. So that's one of the things that's tricky about AC versus DC. So anyway, so we're going to make sure that we match the white to the red and the drain to the black. Now, these guys tacked off like that, and we will secure them to this side with one of those little screw bits, two of those little screw bits probably, and a zip tie. So at this point, it would probably be a good idea to batten a couple pedals down if we can, partially to show you the battening technique I'm going to use, and also just because the Morning Stars can probably live where they're going to live as long as I can get all the cables into them. And because there's nothing on the back panel of them, nothing back here, it's prime candidate to suck up against the back of the thing there. And as long as I've got the USB adapter there on the side, then I can basically have that be completely battened down. I can access every jack and be fine. So in that case, that means I need to batten them down with screws, but you might notice that a couple of these pedals seem to have like these little dealios on them. I don't know which camera to look at, sorry. Anyway, what these are, they're actually bike chain links. I read about this online and tried it and thought, okay, whatever. So you buy a bike chain and you buy a link puller and you stick a link in there and you pop it out to the point where you get these little links. And all you do is you take a screw out of the bottom of the pedal, the real screw, put the link in there and then screw the screw back in. And it's very strong. And you just screw them down to the carpet with these same screws I've been using. And they're absolutely brilliant. Now, one thing I should say, anytime you're changing the length of a screw in a device, you are risking something catastrophic. So if you're taking the old screw out and putting the old screw back in, it's going to be fine. If it grabs, it will work. However, on these Morning Stars, you got to be really careful. You'll notice that I've only done 3, and that's because one of the screws in here, I mean, all the screws are unbelievably short. They're seriously short. So I had to find different screws that would fit the threads. But the circuit boards come right to the bottom of this device, like right to the bottom. And the reason why the screws are so short is because if they were any longer, they would pierce the circuit board. Bad news. So any device, if you're ever going to try to lengthen the screw to do something like this, you need to take the device apart to make sure that that screw isn't going to screw into a component or a jack or something like that. So these 3 on this unit, I feel, are safe, but you'll want to do your own investigation if you choose to go that route. So the idea is I've got the guys here, right? And I need to make sure that I've got enough channel for this guy to get through there. That's fine. This guy's fine as long as he's got enough room for that USB port, which he does. So basically, I can just take some screws now and screw down these eyelets right to the bottom of the board. And that dude ain't going nowhere. So yeah, the bike chain thing, apparently it works. Doesn't work for all products in an easy way, I will say that you can have a situation where it doesn't work. So sometimes screws aren't long enough. Sometimes screws are too small. Sometimes, you know, your friend Reinhold decides to make a pedal where the screws are on the front and the back. So what you have to do is bend the link. Now, remember what I said about bending metal earlier. If you're going to bend something, bend it slowly. Because if you don't, you'll do what I did and snap about 6 of the darn things when you're trying to bend them. So bend them slowly. But it does mean, look at that, that is not going anywhere. Honestly, that is as strong could be. So I'm going to batten down this other one, and then we'll get back to work. So next, we should feed the 9-volt here on this side, and also the feed for the 7-pin MIDI for the Rocktron MIDI Mate. So if we come around the front, I think it'll be a little cleaner. So we've got these really long ones. So these long guys, if we tuck it, I mean, I'm not permanent yet, but we're just tucking to see how it works. And it looks like, yeah, that'll be good. So it'll feed right into here nicely. And then also I have another one, and I can have it mate to this guy right here. So very clean. Let's do that. Actually, upon looking at this, I was just getting ready to take this over there and start soldering it, and I realized that while I need to have the power go to these two from Zuma, that's fine. These other 3 need to be soldered onto the cable that is going to feed up into the 3.5 millimeter cable for the MC6 Pro. So I'm going to leave this for a second until I'm ready to sort of do that one. I think I'll have the cable cut. It'll be ready. It'll be plugged in. It'll just be sitting out here. But I am going to reinstall this real quick just to make sure that I don't get in trouble, because I don't want to take it out again to re-solder it. I want to solder all 5 of those pins at the same time so that I don't get into trouble later. Put it that way. So that makes the most sense to me. Okay, check. I think I'm going to work on some stuff that I don't have to redo later. So the ML10Xs are all completely solid now. So maybe what I'll do is the input jack. So if you remember, I had planned on having one of these jacks be an external loop for the ML10X, but I've basically taken most of the pedals I would want to permanently use in a loop, and I've put them inside the board like Compadre and Ultraviolet. So at this point, I think anything else that I want to add in front of the board can just go in front of the board like a wah or a normal pedal would. And as a result, I'm going to take this first jack here and use that as the input jack for the entire board. So the ML10X is actually a stereo input. These are stereo loops if you want them to be. However, I'm only going to be using these as mono loops because they're going to go in front of the guitar preamp, which is mono, so what's the point? So I could simply just send a tip and sleeve signal from this to the input of this and make it a mono input. But it would mean that I would have to remember that only tip A was connected. So if I get really sleepy and I'm trying to make a tone sometime and I inadvertently select input B, that's going to be a problem. So what I'm going to do is actually just mult the same signal to the tip and the ring, so that even though it's a mono input, it's going to be seeing the exact same thing on input A and input B. So that will probably make it easier for me. So we've got a cable here, and I think we'll start with the tip like that. Cool. And there we go. And once this is in there, I'll trim it. And then this is basically going to go over here underneath all these jacks like that. And it will go right to input 1 here on Mr. Morningstar. Okay, so let's set this up. First thing, never forget, because you will. It'll just happen, but just don't beat yourself up. But just don't forget to put the other end of the jack on the wire first, because invariably you will forget. And it's really annoying when you do, so just don't. Just remember to do that before you solder. Oh God, I've done it so many times. I have done it so many times. Now remember, I want to have the same signal go to the tip and the ring. So I'm soldering 2 points, not just 1 point here. I want to make sure I get the tip. And I also want the ring, and the sleeve will be ground. And even if I don't show you this step every time, remember, we want to test every single connection to make sure it's good. So we'll just test. Tip. Good. This tip should also go to the ring. Does. Shouldn't touch the ground, which it doesn't. The ground should connect, and it does. It doesn't talk to anybody else. So we're good. Moving on.